Hey guys. Oh, hang on, we got some stream issues. Y'all may hear me, y'all may not. There we are. Hey guys, welcome to Complete Developer Raw, a live show with Will and BJ. Hey, there we are. Uh, so, Endgame comes out tonight. Who is hyped? Uh, I know I won't be seeing it until probably week after next because it just happened to come out right before finals, right before I'm speaking at a conference. Like all sorts of live stuff hitting right now. I am like study, study, study. I really need to work on my slides for the conference next week, but passing my final is a little just a little bit more important. You know what I mean? So I'm working on that, and that's about it. I mean, I've got that, and then all my other responsibilities: work, church, podcast. That is kind of my life right now. So, how about you, man?
I have been working on book edits and just trying to get ahead on stuff at the day job. I also went to NSS and did a set of mock interviews with five of their students, and that was last night. Uh, Pretty impressive group, so that was very interesting to to get to do that and to drill and practice from that side of the table as
Mm-hmm.
well. Um, Other than that, man, I mean, I'm just working all the time still.
Yeah, I totally got that. Completely understand it. So, let's see. Podcast news. We are sad to see that Junior Developer Toolbox, Dave and Aaron, have decided to shut the doors. We were there when they first started. Help those guys kind of get rolling and stuff. They had a good run. Honestly, I've been thinking about it. Like I was thinking about it on the way home from the gym today. And if you and I had both been junior developers, I don't know that we would have kept this up because trying to get our career started and life started and stuff like that, it really helped. At least from my perspective as the junior, when we started, having you with the stability already there and the knowledge already there, and not having both of us having to learn stuff as we're doing it. So I gotta give mad props to Aaron and Dave for all the hard work that they put in during the JDT run. So
Yeah. It
um,
it does suck to see them close down. I mean, I can understand why. It does take a ton of time.
mm-hmm.
Just coming up with content and creating it, and then editing and doing all the website management. I mean, it's a lot,
Yeah,
and yeah,
it's
I can definitely see how my initial position of stability was very helpful.
yeah.
For being able to do that, plus being able to pay for equipment.
That helps too.
that
Because when we started, let's see, I was apprenticing with you and working. I was selling insurance when we first started, wasn't I? Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So like I was just barely, I'd have good months and bad months working in sales. So yeah, it was it was interesting times back then. I was learning and uh, well, the podcast was really just a way to help me learn
Yeah.
in some ways. So, but no, they did a great job. I enjoyed listening to a lot of their shows, and so sad to see them go. I know that they said they'll stick around in the community. They're both admins on our Slack channel. And I'm hoping they both want to stick around and help us admin that because it's really nice having four of us there so that, we can keep the conversation going or welcome new people when they come in, answer questions. It's quite nice having like more than just one or two of us, like having that group to work together with them. So I know they said they're going to stick around for that, so I'm happy about that. Um, Also, we'll be sending out water bottles in a couple of weeks. Probably not next week just because of all the stuff I got going on next week, but I try to send them out at the beginning of each month. So if you have gotten a water bottle, well, not gotten, but if you have heard your name and you haven't gotten to me with your address and contact information, go ahead and be sending that in. I'm going to give you guys until a week from tomorrow. So you got a week, and I'll guarantee you get it. If not, it might be the next month. That said, if I've missed anybody, like if you haven't gotten one and you sent me your information, shoot me another email. It may have gone to my spam filter or something like that. So just shoot me an email. I will make sure to get that. And that email is neckbeards@completedeveloperpodcast.com. So, guys, moving on into our first question.
What is the single most important skill a programmer should have? I would say it's the ability to learn on demand, because you're not going to know everything that you've got to know, and you're going to have to pick stuff up basically as you work. And I would say that that is going to be the most necessary thing that you're going to
Mm-hmm.
have.
Yeah, I would definitely have to agree with you on that one. Learning on demand or just the ability to learn, I think that's really what they're hiring for when people are hiring developers. I know when I'm looking at people when we're interviewing and I'm on the interview team, one of the things I'm looking for is not so much what you know, unless you're coming in for a more senior position, but your ability to learn it.
Yeah. And I would also say one of the other things is probably the ability to be patient, um,
Mm,
with all the things that are screwed up, that are still screwed up, just because you see a lot of people that burn out and then flame out
yeah.
and then go do something else. And so you're not going to last very long if you're um, quick to anger over how messed up some things are.
I can understand that. That makes sense. All right, moving on to question number 2. Do programmers have different brains? Brains. Sorry, got to get the zombie joke in
Well, it depends on how many freezers they
there.
have.
No,
So maybe we do
yeah.
have different brains if we answer questions that way.
Um, so this I picked this question for myself because it reminds me of something you told me when I first got back into programming, when kind of when you guys were trying to talk me into just messing around with it to get my mind off things. Was you told me that I naturally thought the way that you had to learn to think.
Well, I mean, yeah, I kind of thought that way a lot too, but as far as like you and I both, I think, came from that perspective of we are used to breaking problems down
Mm-hmm.
and abstracting and drilling down to the necessary level. And a lot of people going into programming don't have that. And so I
Yeah.
don't know that it's necessarily like I don't think you would see anything in like brain morphology that says this guy's a programmer. Um,
No, what I'm getting at though is that there are some people who are naturally inclined to that, and other people um, who have to learn to think that way. And
yeah, and also I
I
wonder
don't think it's
too. Um, we were talking about that. The other thing I wonder about too is like whether prior experiences like drive us in that direction, like the video games we played
mm-hmm.
as kids, or the kind of projects we worked on. I mean, like helping my dad build stuff. That thought process kind of has to be there for designing a building and putting up a shed or putting up a greenhouse or
Yeah.
whatever. And so I don't know how you could make the line between nature and nurture on that one.
It would definitely be a difficult one to make, um, but I do think that there is a different way of thinking when you're programming and when you're having to do that. This is why, uh, like we've had episodes on distractions and things like that, and why we have to focus so much where other people who have just as difficult jobs don't require that level of focus.
Right.
um, and it is because it takes a certain way of thinking. Different brains, maybe not, but I think there are some people who kind of naturally fall into that. some more than others, and some like there are certain things that are natural for you that I had to really train myself to do, whereas there are things that are natural for me that you had to train yourself to do.
Yeah. And
And
I'll also
so
say that it'll change your brain.
yeah,
Um,
it will do that.
I mean, I've like done like Christmas dinner or Thanksgiving dinner, and actually had like a freaking project plan sitting there for like when everything needed to go in the oven and the time requirements, and like like I had the whole thing planned out like a developer. And that's kind of common. I
Yeah.
mean, I remember Hanselman talking about debugging something in the kitchen, like the way that somebody was doing something. Oh, this is you're doing this in an inefficient way. So I'd say that that's kind of common too. It's probably it's going to change you rather than you already be there.
Mm, that makes sense. That makes sense. And I think it does. Like it's getting into it and doing it all the time has definitely changed my life uh, for the better in a lot of places. Not really for the worse, just for the different in some others. So, all right, moving on to question number. Unless you got more.
No,
All right, moving on to question number 3 then.
who's the better developer? Someone with a 4-year degree in CS or someone with 4 years of self study? I'd say that you can't really answer that because a lot of the people with the CS degrees are, terrible programmers,
Yeah.
just frankly, and they're not going into it for that. There's also people in CS that are coding all the time because they enjoy it. And CS was as close as they could get to a trade school type programming thing. So that's what they did. You'll also run into people that have done 4 years of self study that really never had a direction for what they were trying to do. So they can't, build up an app, from first principles. They can't, get there. And then you'll run into people also that have done 4 years of self study, and they started learning to build apps because they wanted to build something and they went and built the thing. And
Mm-hmm.
a lot of those people will be better off than the people that got a 4-year comp sci degree if if the comp sci degree people didn't actually build something real.
Yeah.
I guess the way to put it is like, who's better at shoveling manure, the guy with the snow shovel or the guy with like a spade? And the answer is the guy that does the shoveling.
Yeah, that makes
He throws
sense.
the crap out there.
Yeah, yeah, that does make sense. That's a very very Will way of saying that too.
Yeah, it is weird how many barnyard metaphors come up, but
Comes up. It's probably to do with the way you were raised. You know, going back to that nature versus nurture conversation from
yeah.
earlier. All right, we have a question in the comments. John Wells says, "You inherit working legacy VB SQL code. Do you limp it along or rebuild it in your preferred language?"
Mm. I,
Hmm.
okay, so I have done this. I've done both ways.
Uh huh.
Um, if you're talking legacy VB, I'm assuming you're not talking .NET. I'm assuming you're talking like the stuff that died in 2002 and still walks around like a zombie. Um, yeah. Uh, there's a few considerations. One is how much longer do you expect to keep the app alive?
Mm-hmm.
If it's going to be around for the next 5 years, I would just limp along with just regular old VB. If you're looking at the next 10 years or something like that, then yeah, you might consider a rewrite. I'll also tell you that a lot of rewrites are kind of they're a lot harder than you might think because there's a lot of little squirrely bits in VB that it does stuff for you that, for instance, other platforms do not. There's things like the do events keyword that basically says, hey, process stuff that's on the message loop and then jump back into this code. So it gets you this fake multi-threading
Mm-hmm.
thing. And that's kind of hard to replicate in a lot of other languages and get all the little quirks out. Um, so I would be pretty mixed on that. The other thing is they may have components that they're using that you can't replace, and you're going to have to rewrite those too, like some of the grids and stuff. That could be very interesting. Um, I guess the other thing is, what value are you providing by rewriting it?
Mm-hmm.
Um,
That's what I was going to get at, because a lot of what I've done has been rebuilding, not rebuilding, but building new systems to replace old ones. And we weren't given the old code to work with. We were given, hey, here's how we're using it, because they're in a lot of places they're not using it the way it was built, and they didn't want us to like fall into the trap of just trying to rebuild in a newer language. They wanted us to solve the problem the way that the language wanted it should be used to solve it. Sometimes I wish we had known a few things about the way it was built beforehand, and other times I'm glad we didn't. It's sort of a mixed bag there, but with what I've been doing, it's been all right. We're rebuilding this to make it more modern so that we can add things like online capabilities and ability for customers to submit things rather than just having employees hand enter them in. Um,
right.
and so it really comes down to, John. I think what we're getting at here is what are you gaining by rebuilding it? Like, are you going to rebuild it so that you can add functionality that a newer language has, so you can make it more maintainable and last longer,
And
or
work
are
on the
you re
internet.
yeah, or are you rebuilding it because you just don't want to deal with VB?
Yeah, and at some level that is probably valid too,
That is,
right?
yeah.
Because other developers don't want to deal with it either. I've got a good friend that actually wrote his own JSON parser in classic VB, um,
Okay.
with all the fun that that entails. So it's definitely doable to go ahead with this and just use classic. You're probably going to eventually go insane if you weren't insane for starting it. Um, so yeah, I think the big trick here is to try to figure out like what the business owner gets out of it, and then convince them that, hey, we need to rewrite it, and here's the things we could get for doing that. Because the other
Yeah.
thing you may get to do is you may get to get rid of old code.
Mm-hmm.
You're going to also see some weird things in VB that, you know, just are based around how that language works. So you didn't have proper inheritance of objects then. You're going to see a lot of stuff like they had a web browser control that they could bring in, and you could get click events, and you put JavaScript in there that said, hey, call outside the window object and call some other function out here, and you could totally do that with a hosted web browser control. And so some of those kind of things are probably not overly secure. So that may be an argument you can use. I mean, I would lean towards trying to rewrite it. It's just you got to be able to sell that.
That makes sense. All right, guys. Coming up next week, we have an episode called Improving Your Emotional Intelligence. And we've all had times where we're on top of our game. It was like we could sense what others were feeling and thinking and had the right responses to every situation. Other times, we're not so in tune with ourselves or others. So, in the episode, we talk about things that people, including Will and myself, do when we're expressing signs of sort of low emotional intelligence. We talk about how to recognize it, what to do if someone is behaving that way, and what to do if that someone is you. So, be on the lookout. That'll come out next Thursday. John wrote again, thanks, guys. So you're welcome, man. Hope that's helpful. Guys, hope this has been helpful for everyone. We're going to jump off here and record another episode. So we will talk to you guys later.